Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the place where we take all the complex research, kind of strip away the noise, and just give you the essential truths you need.
We're really here to give you that shortcut,
Yeah.
to being genuinely well-informed, especially when it comes to your health. And today, we are diving deep into a topic that I think touches pretty much everyone, body fat.
Oh, yeah. That's the universal thing, isn't it? We all do it. You look in the mirror, you try on those jeans from a few years ago, and you immediately focus on the most obvious thing, the pinchable stuff.
We all call it belly fat.
Right. And we make a plan to fight that.
And that's a powerful motivator, for sure. But our sources for this deep dive, they suggest that it kind of misdirects all the effort. The most dangerous battle for your health isn't the fat you can see and pinch. It's the fat you can't see.
We're talking about completely pivoting the discussion here, moving away from subcutaneous fat, that visible layer, to the hidden, silent danger, which is visceral fat. And it's a total game changer when you realize you might have been, I don't know, fighting the wrong enemy this whole time.
Our mission today is pretty straightforward. We've gone through a whole stack of the latest articles, nutritional studies, fitness research, and we've pulled out 4 surprising science-backed truths about how to reduce that visceral fat specifically. This isn't just generic weight loss advice.
No, this is targeted. It's internal health optimization. And, if you're looking for clear, practical articles on this stuff, fitness, nutrition, wellness, the kind of knowledge that explains the why behind the how you need a reliable home base. And that's why we always point you toward bfit.ai. It's totally free. It's a go-to source for clear, actionable knowledge, just like what we're about to get into.
It's the perfect place to go deeper on the strategies we talk about here. So let's get into it. Let's define this invisible danger.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We've said not all fat is created equal. I think most people know the common type, subcutaneous fat. That's the stuff right under the skin. So why do researchers spend so much time saying visceral fat is so fundamentally different?
It all boils down to location. And that location dictates everything. Its function, its risk profile, all of it. Subcutaneous fat is, it's relatively safe. It's mostly for insulation and energy storage.
And it's not really metabolically active in a bad way.
Not in the same way, no. Excess subcutaneous fat isn't great, obviously, but visceral fat is a whole different ballgame.
So where exactly is it hiding?
It's deep. It's inside your abdominal cavity. And it's not just a layer. It's literally packed in and around your vital organs, your liver, your stomach, your intestines.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so think of it less like a soft blanket and more like a hard, dense material that's almost suffocating your internal systems. The technical term is ectopic fat, which means fat that's showing up where it absolutely should not be.
That sounds aggressive. So the location is the problem. But what is it doing in there? Why is it so much more dangerous?
This is where the silent danger part comes in. Visceral fat isn't just sitting there. It is an extremely active endocrine tissue. It's like a little factory constantly pumping out this toxic cocktail of inflammatory molecules.
Directly into your system.
And not just anywhere. Specifically into the portal vein.
And the portal vein, that goes straight to the liver, right?
Exactly. And that is the key. You see, subcutaneous fat releases its signals into your general circulation, where it all gets diluted. But visceral fat has a direct, private highway to your liver.
So the liver is getting a concentrated blast of this inflammatory stuff. What does that actually do? What are the health risks?
Well, that chronic inflammation is basically the root cause of systemic metabolic failure. When the liver is constantly bombarded by these inflammatory signals, it starts to ignore insulin. It becomes insulin resistant.
Which is the first step towards type 2 diabetes.
It's the precursor, yes. And on top of that, the fat that's released from these visceral stores often ends up right back in the liver, creating non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
And I'm guessing that inflammation doesn't just stay in the liver.
Not at all. Once those molecules get into your general circulation, they start attacking your vascular system. They promote plaque buildup in your arteries, which leads to high blood pressure and a hugely elevated risk of heart attack and stroke. The data is just crystal clear on this. High visceral fat is a powerful, independent predictor of early death.
It's so easy to talk about these things in the abstract, But the sources give us a story that makes it really tangible. The case of a guy named Dayton. He didn't look, particularly unhealthy.
Dayton is such a perfect example of that skinny fat paradox.
Yeah.
Thin outside, fat inside. He thought he was pretty active, definitely not obese. He had a bit of a soft belly, but nothing that would ring alarm bells.
But then he got a DEXA scan.
And the internal truth was just shocking. His total body fat was 33%, which is high, sure. But the visceral fat number, that was the real wake-up call.
What was it?
The scan isolated and measured it. He had a staggering 2,200 grams of fat packed deep in his abdomen.
2,200 grams. That's nearly 5 pounds.
Almost 5 pounds of the most metabolically toxic fat you can have, completely hidden. You can't pinch that. It's wrapped around his organs.
Yeah.
And that's the number you, the listener, really need to care about, not just the number on the scale.
That story really makes you realize the mirror is a terrible judge of your internal health. So, okay, let's get to the big paradox here. If this fat is so dangerous and we know exactly where it is, why can't a surgeon just go in there and take it out?
That's the biggest misconception out there. Liposuction can target subcutaneous fat, the pinchable stuff, because it's right there under the skin. It's accessible.
But visceral fat is untouchable.
Completely. It's all
Yeah.
interwoven with your mesentery, the tissue holding your intestines in place, and it's way too close to major blood vessels and organs. Trying to remove it surgically would be an incredibly complex and dangerous operation. It's just not done.
So we're left with just one tool, metabolic change.
That's it.
So we have this fat that's invisible, it's actively toxic, and it's surgically untouchable. That sounds terrifying.
It does. But here is the massive, counterintuitive piece of good news. And it's really the key motivator for this whole deep dive. Visceral fat is actually easier to lose than other types of fat.
Way easier. How? I would think most toxic stuff would be the most stubborn.
It's easier precisely because it's so metabolically active. That activity means its cells are just covered in receptors that respond really quickly to fat-burning hormonal signals. Subcutaneous fat is stingy. It wants to hold on to its energy. But visceral fat is volatile. When you start using the right strategies, it's the first to open the floodgates and release its fuel.
That completely changes the motivation here. We're not talking about some impossible task. We're talking about targeting a really responsive enemy.
Exactly. And the rest of our chat is about the 4 specific signals that get the biggest response. And we're going to start by challenging probably the oldest rule in nutrition, the idea that a calorie is just a calorie.
Okay, let's unpack this one. This is like a sacred cow of diet culture. The standard advice is simple math. Calories in minus calories out. Eat more, gain weight, eat less, lose weight. And the sources agree with that basic math, but they add this critical layer. They say if you're eating extra calories, the quality of that food dictates where your body stores the extra energy.
That's right. The body has a storage preference, and some nutrients basically flip a switch that tells it to pack fat away deep inside as visceral fat. It's one of the biggest findings in recent nutrition science.
And the research that really proved this was the 2014 muffin experiment. I want to walk through this one because it is just definitive proof of quality over quantity when it comes to fat storage.
It was a brilliant study, really rigorous. They took 39 people and had them overeat by an extra 750 calories every single day for 7 weeks. And all those extra calories came from custom-made muffins.
750 calories is a lot. Everyone was going to gain weight.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the key. They split them into 2 groups based on the type of fat in the muffins. Group 1 got muffins made with polyunsaturated fats, or PUFAs, the kind you find in, fish oil, walnuts, things like that.
Okay. And group 2?
Group 2 got muffins rich in saturated fats. So the kind you find in butter, coconut oil, fatty cuts of meat.
So same calories, same potential for weight gain, just a different kind of fat. What happened on the scale?
The scale showed a draw. Both groups gained pretty much the same amount of total weight, about 3 or 4 pounds. So the basic calorie theory held up for overall weight.
But the body scans inside. That's where the scary part was.
That's where it was.
Yeah.
The saturated fat group, the people eating the butter-rich muffins, they gained double the amount of visceral belly fat compared to the other group.
Oh, bull.
Double. Same total weight gain, but a huge disproportionate amount of it was stored as the deadliest type of fat.
That is just staggering. It means if you're constantly overeating calories from high saturated fat foods, your body is literally choosing to send that fat straight to your vital organs.
And researchers think it's because the liver handles these fats differently. Saturated fats are just harder for the body to process efficiently, especially in big amounts. It triggers this process called de novo lipogenesis.
Making new fat.
Exactly, making new fat right there in the liver, and then it gets stored in the visceral area. The polyunsaturated fats, on the other hand, are much more easily used for energy. They don't trigger that same storage pathway.
And there was a bonus for the polyunsaturated group too, wasn't there?
Yes. Not only did they gain less visceral fat, they actually built more lean muscle mass during that time. It just points to a much better overall metabolic environment.
Hmm.
It shows why just counting calories is incomplete if you care about visceral health.
Okay, so this is the actionable part. What are the concrete guidelines? How much saturated fat is too much?
The sources are really clear.
Hmm.
You have to be aggressive and aware. The goal should be to keep your daily saturated fat intake below 20 to 30 grams. And for a lot of people, that means you have to track it, at least for a while.
That seems like a really small window, especially with, a typical Western diet. Let's go back to Dayton for a second.
Dayton was a textbook case of this. He wasn't, binge eating junk food, but he loved rich, savory food. His typical dinner, a big 16-ounce ribeye steak, could have 25 grams of saturated fat in that one meal alone.
So one meal and he's basically at his limit for the day. If he had, cheese on a sandwich for lunch, he's way over. He could be hitting 50 or 60 grams and not even feel like he's overdoing it.
Correct. He was consistently sending that signal to his body. Store this extra energy as visceral fat. The solution isn't to cut out all pleasure, to make smart substitutions.
Give us some of those smart swaps. What can people do right now?
The easiest place to start is with protein and cooking. So instead of that fatty ribeye, swap it for a leaner cut, like a top sirloin or a flank steak. You immediately cut about 15 grams of saturated fat right there.
Simple.
Yeah. And when you're cooking, swap out butter or coconut oil for olive oil or avocado oil. Those are monounsaturated fats, which are much better for you.
And what about actively adding in the good fats from the study?
Absolutely. You have to be intentional about it. Aim for fatty fish salmon, mackerel, sardines, 2 or 3 times a week. They're loaded with omega-3s, which are directly linked to lower visceral fat.
Yeah.
And it's about the small choices, too. Choosing a handful of walnuts over a cheese stick for a snack.
It takes some vigilance, but it completely changes what's happening inside your body. Okay, so we've covered the quality of fats. Let's shift to carbs, because the sources say one specific type of sugar is the absolute villain for visceral fat.
Yes, and just like with fats, it's about specificity. We're talking about fructose. Sugar is often treated as this one big bad guy, but research has really zeroed in on fructose as being uniquely bad for building up visceral fat.
So what's the science there? Why fructose and not, say, glucose?
Well, we can look right at this landmark 2009 study. Designed to isolate the effects perfectly. They had people consume the exact same number of calories, the same amount of sugar, but one group got pure fructose and the other got pure glucose.
So again, controlling the quantity to prove the quality matters. What happened?
The results were so striking. After 10 weeks, only the fructose group showed a significant increase in their visceral belly fat. The glucose group gained weight, sure, but it was mostly subcutaneous fat, the less dangerous kind. Fructose clearly has a preference for that deep abdominal fat.
And why? Why does fructose do that?
It's all about how it's metabolized. You see, glucose can be used by almost every cell in your body. Fructose, on the other hand, is almost entirely processed in the liver. It bypasses all these key regulatory steps. So when you flood your liver with a lot of fructose, it doesn't use it for energy. It just rapidly converts it into fat molecules, triglycerides.
So your liver becomes a fat factory, and where does that new fat go?
First, some of it gets stored right there in the liver, which leads to fatty liver disease.
Yeah.
And second, and this is the critical part for our topic, it gets packaged up and sent out into the bloodstream, where it's preferentially stored in those visceral fat depots around your organs. It's a direct pathway from a high fructose drink to visceral fat.
And you mentioned there was another danger for the fructose group in that study.
Yes, their insulin sensitivity got much worse. Their bodies just struggled to process all carbohydrates after that. So fructose not only caused dangerous fat storage, it also sabotaged their ability to manage blood sugar going forward. It's a vicious cycle.
Okay, let's address the big question everyone's thinking. Fruit. If fructose is the villain, do we have to stop eating apples and bananas?
This is such a vital point, and the sources are very clear. No, absolutely do not fear whole fruit. The danger comes from added, concentrated fructose.
Explain the difference.
Whole fruit has fiber and water, and that fiber and water dramatically slows down how fast the fructose gets absorbed. The liver gets a slow, manageable trickle that it can handle safely. To get a dangerous dose of fructose from fruit, you'd have to eat, an absurd amount. It's the concentrated stuff that's the problem.
Right, so the fiber is the built-in safety mechanism. So we need to focus on where the bad stuff, the isolated fructose and high fructose corn syrup, is hiding.
And it is everywhere. Beyond the obvious things like soda and candy, it's used as a sweetener and texturizer in foods that don't even taste that sweet. Table sugar is half fructose.
So give us a list. Where are people getting these hidden doses?
Okay, think about breakfast. Most commercial cereals, granola, sweetened yogurts, even supposedly healthy fruit juices without the fiber. Then you move into things like salad dressings, jams, and condiments like ketchup and barbecue sauce. Even a single bubble tea can have up to 50 grams of it. It's the sheer volume we consume that's the problem.
Eliminating all that sounds hard, but the sources had this brilliant strategy calling it the protein antidote. It's about adding something good, not just taking away something bad.
It's a metabolic masterstroke.
Mm.
You're using the natural power of protein to make you feel full. When you eat more protein, it suppresses your hunger hormones and boosts your satiety hormones. You just feel more satisfied, so you're less likely to go looking for those high fructose foods later.
So your body just naturally starts losing fat, kind of without even trying, because the
Yeah.
protein creates an effortless calorie deficit.
Exactly. You're engineering a better metabolic environment. You're cutting the toxic input to fructose while adding the satiety factor, the protein, that helps you burn off the existing visceral fat.
Let's make this super practical. The sources had some great examples. There was one about a mother who changed her morning coffee.
Yes. She used to put 2 spoonfuls of sugar in her coffee every morning. She just replaced that with half a scoop of vanilla protein powder mixed with her milk. She still got the sweetness, but she dropped the sugar and added, 10 or 12 grams of protein to start her day?
And let's revisit Dayton's caramel corn weakness. That was a great example of reframing a craving.
It was. He admitted he'd just binge on huge bags of caramel corn, which is a massive fructose bomb. They didn't tell him to stop wanting something salty and sweet and crunchy. They just replaced it.
And the solution was so creative.
It was pure genius.
Yeah.
They had him start with plain air-popped popcorn. Then he mixed a little sugar-free syrup with some salted caramel protein powder and drizzled that on top. Then for the savory kick, a little sprinkle of powdered cheddar seasoning.
And the outcome.
He got the exact sensory experience he was craving. The salty, the sweet, the crunch. But instead of getting 20 grams of fructose and 0 protein, he was getting almost 30 grams of satisfying protein and almost no added sugar. That's the power of the protein antidote.
So we've covered the quality of our food limit saturated fat, replaced fructose with protein. Now let's get into the physical side and talk about how specific exercise can uniquely target this internal fat.
Right. So in fitness, we always hear this one unbreakable rule. You cannot spot reduce fat. You can do 1,000 crunches, but your body decides where the fat comes off.
It's the frustration of anyone who's ever tried to get a six-pack right. But with visceral fat, our research shows there's this profound, powerful exception to that rule.
Visceral fat is the exception. A huge 2023 meta-analysis confirmed it. They found 2 types of exercise were way better at specifically reducing visceral fat: moderate to high-intensity cardio, and most effectively high-intensity interval training, or HIIT.
So a long, slow jog is good for you, but it isn't targeting visceral fat as well as a short, intense burst. Why is intensity the magic ingredient here?
It's purely biological. It's tied directly back to what we said earlier about visceral fat being so volatile. High-intensity exercise triggers a massive release of fat-mobilizing hormones called catecholamines. That's your adrenaline and noradrenaline.
Your fight or flight hormones.
Exactly. They signal an immediate need for energy right now. And visceral fat cells have a much higher concentration of the receptors, the little antennas, to pick up that signal. It's like the visceral fat has 10 antennas, while the pinchable fat only has 1.
So when adrenaline spikes, the visceral fat gets the message first and loudest.
Loud and clear. And it responds by immediately breaking down and releasing its stored fat into the bloodstream to fuel that intense workout. We're not just burning calories, we're using our own hormones to strategically force the release of the most dangerous fat.
That's a targeted strike. Okay, for the listener, we need a clear, actionable plan. How high is high intensity? How often?
The threshold is your heart rate. You need to get it above 75% of your maximum during those hard efforts. Practically speaking, that means you're breathing so hard that holding a conversation is really difficult. You can gasp out a word or two, but that's it.
And what's the time commitment? That's always the big hurdle.
That's the best part. The time commitment is short. The research shows that 15 to 25-minute interval sessions, just 2-3 times a week, is enough to get that powerful catecholamine response and drive major visceral fat loss. You don't need hours. You need quality.
Okay, let's break down a sample interval structure.
Right, so you'd start with a non-negotiable 5-minute warm-up. Then the main workout is about 6 to 10 rounds of this ratio. 30 seconds of all-out, hard effort, followed by 90 seconds of slow, easy recovery.
Why such a long recovery?
The 90 seconds is crucial. It gives your body just enough time to recover so that on the next 30-second burst, you can actually hit that 75% plus intensity again. If the recovery is too short, your intensity drops with each round and you lose that big hormonal spike.
The sources mentioned a nuance about running versus cycling.
They did. There's some evidence that running might be slightly more effective because it engages more muscle mass, but the ultimate conclusion was very clear. The best exercise is the one you can do consistently and with enough intensity.
Right. So if your knees are bad, running is a terrible choice.
A terrible choice. The key is the physiological effort, not the specific machine. Dayton, for example, switched to rowing intervals and high-incline treadmill walking, and he had massive success because he could maintain the intensity.
And what about the other days of the week? The off days?
It can't just be a couch potato. Overall activity is critical. On your non-interval days, you should have a daily walking goal of at least 8,000 steps. That low-impact movement keeps your metabolism humming and helps with insulin sensitivity without breaking you down.
That makes a lot of sense. And that brings us to our final truth, which is honestly the most motivating piece of this whole thing.
This is the ultimate payoff. After all the talk about danger and intensity, the reward comes fast. Visceral fat is typically the first type of fat your body chooses to burn when you create a calorie deficit.
So the most dangerous fat is also the easiest to lose. That's a powerful irony, isn't it?
It is. From an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense. The body knows this internal fat is a metabolic emergency. It's impairing organ function. So when you start eating less, when resources get scarce, the body prioritizes getting rid of the biggest internal threat first.
Which means the health benefits start immediately, way before you see big changes in the mirror.
Exactly. And the data on the speed is just phenomenal. This is the one statistic everyone needs to remember. Losing just 10 pounds can shrink your visceral fat volume by as much as 30%.
A 30% reduction in the fat linked to heart disease just from losing 10 pounds. That is a massive return on investment for a pretty achievable goal.
It gives you this immediate validation for making these changes. You might be frustrated the scale isn't moving faster, but internally that 30% reduction is already making you healthier at an accelerated rate where it matters most.
This really hammers home the master strategy. The targeted choices, the fats, the protein, the HIT, they're all accelerators. But the engine driving it all is still the calorie deficit.
The deficit is mandatory.
Yeah.
It's what forces your body to tap into its energy stores. The targeted choices just make sure that when your body goes looking for fuel, it goes to the visceral fat stores first.
So if you were in a deficit but still eating a ton of saturated fat, you'd still lose some visceral fat, just much, much slower.
Correct. The deficit is king. But by ignoring quality and intensity, you're fighting an uphill battle. The combined approach is synergy. The deficit creates the need for fuel, and the targeted choices direct your body to the right fuel tank.
Which brings us back to Dayton, who started with that scary 2,200 grams. What was his final result after putting all this into practice?
Dayton's story is the perfect proof of concept. He limited his saturated fats, he used the protein antidote, he did his high-intensity rowing 2 to 3 times a week, and he maintained a sustainable calorie deficit. The result? A 50% drop in his visceral fat in just 10 weeks.
50% in 10 weeks. That's life-changing. It moves him completely out of that high-risk category. Okay, let's just quickly recap those 4 pillars one last time for everyone.
The 4 pillars are: 1. Smart fats. Focus on the quality. Limit saturated fat and replace it with polyunsaturated fats.
2. The protein antidote. Get rid of that high fructose sugar and replace it with high satiety protein to help control your appetite.
3. Targeted intensity. Use high-intensity intervals 2 to 3 times a week to get that catecholamine spike that specifically targets visceral fat.
And 4, the foundational deficit. Remember that a calorie deficit is still the engine, and that visceral fat is the first and easiest fuel for your body to burn. This has been such an illuminating deep dive. I mean, the main message from all these sources seems to be that getting rid of dangerous visceral fat means you have to step away from the generic weight loss playbook.
Absolutely. It's less about the quantity of your food and more about the quality. Less about just moving and more about targeted intensity. You're basically using your body's own biochemistry to your advantage.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, right now? We've covered a lot. But knowing that the fat you can't see is the one with the biggest impact, and that it's also the easiest to lose, here's the thought to take with you. Which single small change, the smart fat swap, the protein replacement in your coffee, or that first 20-minute interval session will you start with today to prioritize your hidden health?
Start small, be consistent, and just remember that 30% reduction from just 10 pounds. That's a powerful motivator.
And if you need clear, practical guidance on any of this stuff, articles on fitness, nutrition, all the science we talked about today, make sure you check out bfit.ai. It's your free resource for cutting through all the noise.
We look forward to diving deep with you again next time.
Take care of that hidden health.